Guys all ready? All right, good. I was hoping they wouldn't have sent you guys. You're the tougher reporters. So we'll do it anyway. You know? No Rick Albin, though. Hopefully he's watching on the live
I
stream.
get judiciary, so I'm going to take one picture and bolt.
Okay, all right, good.
Not that I don't like it.
Okay, all right. You want one picture? All right.
There we go.
You good? All right. All right, we're taking a picture, I guess. Good. You got me? Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. We're back. We're back in session. It's a great thing, isn't it? Aren't you happy we're back? We'll see. We'll see how much we're here over the next few weeks. But anyway, I think the time away really gave us even more time to go back and read the Governor's Population Council report, Growing Michigan Together, and also, as we're looking at that, really the big thing for me is that it clearly states the state is lacking a coordinated economic growth plan. And unfortunately, after 5 years of Whitmer, I don't think we're going to get that from her. And so, since that report came out, something that we've been working on as a caucus, the House Republicans, over this time where we didn't have a lot of session, was what would some elements of a coordinated economic growth plan look like? And so what we're doing today is we're putting those out there and we're entering those in the conversation. And I would say as we move forward, you look at economic development and you see, Senator Brinks has put some things out there that are very different than where Governor Whitmer is. And then, I saw some great reporting recently. I can't remember if it was MERS or Gongwer, but, they're both so good. And I was reading it, and it basically was members of Tate's caucus that seemed to be siding with Brinks. If you notice that, they're siding with Brinks. They're talking about how Brinks's ideas are so good. Well, one thing I want to make clear, let's assume that these Democrats that won the specials yesterday get seated, and that the results are certified and they come in. It's very clear to me that the Democrats are not going to be able to get an economic growth plan done without bipartisan help. Whether that's, Dylan Wegela, who's never voted for one of these economic development projects, or it's some of these other members of Tate's caucus that are talking about, how they like Brink's idea better. Okay, so there's a lot of splintering on the Democrats on this. And so this, and then you hear Whitmer say, this is my number one priority for the next few months, is economic development. And so, we're problem solvers. So we wanted to come forward with some ideas that we could put forward, number one, as part of a coordinated economic growth plan, and number two, as part of this economic development conversation as we move forward. And I'll just say that involves SOAR and higher, okay? Because SOAR has existed for many years now, or a couple years. It feels like many years, doesn't it, Beth? We've been doing this together. It feels like years, but it's only been a couple years. So SOAR needs a lot of reform. We've learned that, and we've actually learned that through a lot of your reporting. You guys have done such a great job reporting on that. And also, as we move forward with higher, we need changes there too. So I'll just start big picture. Number one, the income tax went up this year. And so for the people that are filing and got those checks back, that check's going to be lower next year because the income tax went up. So people in Michigan are going to have less money in their pockets. So the number one thing as part of a coordinated economic growth plan has to be reversing the Democrats' income tax hike that took effect this year when it went from 4.05 to 4.25. We need to see that go back to 4.05. And you're going to see bills get introduced on a lot of these things very soon. Secondly, we need to have better regulatory policy in the state. we need more of a focus on growing our existing companies here in the state. Okay? A lot of this conversation is about, we've passed all these policies that make it so difficult to do business in Michigan, so let's write checks to certain people so that it's cheaper. Well, if we just start working on the fundamentals of a more customer-friendly MEDC and looking at bills, which some of our members will talk about today, on how to be constantly reviewing these regulations and ensure that they meet, that they're science-based, and that they're measuring them based on things that make sense, like how do they affect incomes and jobs in the state. So we need better regulatory policies, and we need more of a focus on our existing companies, because it's much cheaper to just help our existing companies grow than it is to go out and hunt for new ones. And if we do that and we work on those fundamentals, it'll also make it where when we're trying to land the bigger deals, they'll be easier to land because we'll have a better environment in the state and it'll be cheaper to write those checks. It doesn't make sense to do these big headhunting programs without a focus on the fundamentals, okay? Number three, we need to do a much better job of measuring these workforce development programs in the state before we create new ones. You notice these things are housed all over government, and then with this SOAR hire, they want to create new ones. But I would just say, are these even working? Are people, how are people graduating? What jobs are they getting? We need to be measuring these things a lot better as we're setting priorities with how to spend your dollars. Fourth, we need more accountable and transparent economic development plans, and I'll get into that more later, but I'll just say, you look at these deals Whitmer's cut, they're not good deals. They're deals where we're paying way too much money for not enough return for the taxpayer. And so a lot of the bills that we're going to be proposing this week and next week are centered on that. How do you get better value in return for the taxpayers? Should we be looking at as part of SOAR? And I want to compliment Senator Brinks for bringing SOAR into this conversation, because you have to do them together. You have to, if you're going to create a new one higher, you have to reform SOAR. You have to do them together. And so we agree with her on that. We may have some differences on how you get there, but we agree in concept. And so I would just say, as you're looking at SOAR, they need to care about the wages that those jobs pay when they're making those deals. And so, they're giving way too much money for deals that don't actually pay much money to workers. So the wages should matter. Otherwise, why are we spending billions of dollars that we could be spending on roads and bridges and education and public safety? So I would just say you've got to care about the wages. And then, they do these things where they hire all these workers over here and then they lay them off over there, right? That isn't right either. We got to fix that as we're moving forward with these programs. They should be hiring workers. And if they're laying off workers somewhere else, then they need to claw that back. And they're not doing that. And then I would just say one of the reasons that these deals are so bad is there's not enough oversight. We need more oversight. You've got to have more legislative oversight over these programs, which I would say means you need the entire legislature to vote on these programs, not just the appropriations committees, which are stacked. They have it's been tied for months, but on the appropriations committee, they have a many-seat advantage to move these things for Governor Whitmer. You're not going to get the same scrutiny as you would if the whole body looked at it. So I would just say you need more of that, and with their clawbacks, those clawbacks, if they really do them, which, you guys know how hard it is to get answers about whether they're really doing them, because if it's anything like me, they don't tell you. So let's assume they're doing them, which a lot of people think they aren't. But if they are clawing them back when they downsize like they did with Ford, those should go to the general fund. And then we can spend them on education and roads, right? Instead of going back into the slush fund, and Whitmer can reallocate them. So I'll let our other members talk more about those things, but we have to make some serious reforms to our economic development programs to make them more transparent and accountable so they make sense for the taxpayer. And then lastly, One of the things that's making it so difficult to grow our economy in Michigan, and we're 39th in wages. It was 31 when the Population Council report came out, and then it went to 39 that fast, right? But, there's a little lag there in terms of the reporting, but that's not good. You need high incomes to support a lot of these things. If you have high incomes, then you can afford houses. You can afford to spend money and start small businesses and do all these things. But if the incomes aren't keeping up with the cost of housing and all these things, then that's when a lot of this conversation has been about government closing that gap. But if we're spending billions of your tax dollars, we should care about the incomes. So I would just say the last thing is this right to work. We saw the Democrats repeal right to work, the first state in the country to do that legislatively, and that has an impact. I mean, when I've sat in meetings where I've tried to help bring companies to Michigan, and that's one of the things some of them say. I've sat in the meetings. They say, if you're not a right to work state, we're not considering you. So you're putting a closed for business sign on many states, and that puts pressure on all these other things. You got to write bigger checks in order to get them to notice you. And that, again, is coming at the expense of education, roads, public health, and public safety. So we're going to advance these 5 concepts as elements of an economic growth plan, and hopefully we can fulfill, we can solve some of the problems that the Population Council identified, because under 5 years of Whitmer, it hasn't happened. So we're coming forward, and hopefully these will be part of the conversation as we move forward. So I'll turn it over to our next member, Dave Martin, right?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, Leader Hall. Good morning. Leader Hall said I'm Representative David Martin, 68th House District. The problem that Michigan's been taking for economic development, there's been too many big corporations, lots of help for them, laying off people, and meanwhile Main Street is forgotten. We got to address the $1 billion that have been secretly through the SOAR fund on several questionable type deals. House Republican plan increases the oversight on those getting state legislative approval, and the unused funds being buried back in the budget. We're capping tax dollars on out-of-state companies. We want to prevent double dipping on SOAR and higher. Can't go for both of those fundings. Our proposal also ensures taxpayers and communities get the most out of the SOAR deal. Real benchmarks. We want to make sure that the higher worker pay that's been promised is actually in there. Earmark some of the SOAR payment for the site prep, and that'll help boost our local economies. The governor's strategy has been all about electric vehicles and big businesses, and that's not cutting it for the hardworking people in my community, and it never trickles down to Main Street. That's why our plan is focused on making life easier for small businesses. They can drive and create jobs in our communities. We're going to tackle issues of outdated regulations and rules. It makes it hard for businesses to thrive. We're going to cut through the red tape, make Michigan a better place for businesses of all sizes across the state. A major part of our plan is review 20% of the rules every year for the next 5 years. We're going to look at whether or not it's helping businesses grow or just getting in the way. If something's not working, we need to get rid of it and make things easier for everyone. We've also heard complaints about slow and inefficient Michigan economic development offices can be. So making a change by introducing performance-based funding and tying funding to measurable outcomes and responses, we incentivize the efficiency of that customer service. And we want to foster an environment that's more responsive and helpful to our local businesses. Small businesses are the heart and soul of Michigan's economy. People I talk to constantly complain about how they're tangled up in red tape. Our solution includes a website designed to be a one-stop shop, streamlines interactions with state departments, including licensing and registration. I'll always stand up for the small family-owned businesses that keep our communities thriving. I hear and understand the problems they're facing. I'm committed to making sure their voices are heard. The plan we're announcing today will make more opportunities into the hands of local entrepreneurs, make a real difference for small businesses across Michigan. I just want to make sure everybody understands Michigan needs to be number one in more than just college football. I want to thank you, and next speaker will be Representative Barr.
Thank you. I would like to say here about small businesses. I just talked to a small business owner this weekend, and he mentioned that it is not until October that his business goes black as far as making any money. So these are really important concepts for the state of Michigan. I'm State Representative Nancy DeBoer. I'm thanking you for joining us today, and I'm pleased to announce an important part of this legislative plan that will bolster the accountability of our state's placement efforts. This proposal will establish checks and balances requiring Michigan Strategic Fund. It's called Michigan Strategic Fund because it's supposed to be strategic, and we want to find out if the strategy works, right? So we're going to report on the performance of workforce placement programs to the State Budget Office and as well as the House and Senate Appropriations Committees. That step will help give us accountability and ensure that taxpayer dollars are being spent on programs that are proven useful. Specifically, the report will include real data about the number of individuals entering the workforce from job placement programs, how much they are earning in their jobs, and the percentage of individuals who attain degrees or certificates to help them succeed throughout their careers. This measure will ensure that taxpayer dollars allocated to these funds are being utilized effectively, efficiently, and with transparency to drive economic growth and create jobs. So regular job placement reporting is a proactive step that will ensure these programs are achieving their attendant goals and delivering tangible benefits to the people of Michigan. So this bill will work with others in the package to better promote prosperity and opportunity for all Michigan workers. So thank you. Our next speaker is Representative Bierlein.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Matthew Bierlein, 97th District. Thanks for being here. For the past few years, our state's been going down the wrong track as it competes for jobs and residents. There's no real coordinated strategy. We're blowing through taxpayer money at a cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars per job. We're subsidizing massive gambles on technology that reflect agendas instead of market demand. It's unsustainable and it's nonsensical. We need a comprehensive, accountable plan that gets to work right now on delivering economic success that people will feel and see. One element of this plan is restoring our widely popular right to work law. This law safeguarded fundamental rights for workers in our state, and I am proud to be sponsoring legislation that would see it returned to Michigan. Last year's decision by Democrats to repeal the right to work law has been deeply troubling. This law, which ensured that individuals had the freedom to work without being compelled to join a union, had been a cornerstone of our state's economic policies and progress. It made us a versatile option for workers and let people keep more of what they earned. Repealing it undermined the principles of individual liberty and choice in the workplace. This legislation is essential for safeguarding the rights of workers and protecting our state's business environment. This is nothing against unions. It is everything for worker choice. Requiring employees to join a union and pay dues as a condition of employment not only restricts their freedom, but also leads to lower pay and fewer job opportunities. The repeal has already had detrimental effects on Michigan's business environment. It has made our state less attractive and more costly for businesses to operate, hindering job creation and economic growth. By reinstating this law, we send a clear message to job providers looking to come to our state and ones who currently operate here. Michigan is open for business, and we prioritize economic freedom and opportunity for everyone. Furthermore, the Janus decision reaffirmed the importance of protecting workers' rights to choose whether or not to financially support a union, and reinstating the right to work law in Michigan aligns with the principles outlined in the Janus decision and ensures that workers are not coerced in supporting unions against their will. With this plan, we're going to increase wages for our state, make it more affordable and desirable for both future and current generations. This is a fix that is sorely needed. I urge my fellow legislators and all Michiganders who value individual freedom and economic prosperity to join me in supporting the reinstatement of right to work. Let us stand together in defense of workers' rights and the principles that make Michigan a beacon of opportunity for all. Thank you, and I'm going to give it back to Leader Hall.
All right, so you can see we've been hard at work developing policy because, one of my key views as a leader in this state, it shouldn't be just criticizing the other side. I mean, we've seen what a terrible job Governor Whitmer has done in terms of growing our economy, and the results are in our Population Council report with the 39th in incomes and, among the worst roads in the country and one of the worst education systems if you look at that in so many ways. So it's not just criticizing, it's also putting forward a positive vision for the future, which we're doing here today with a lot of substance that are elements that are elements that should go into a coordinated economic growth plan. And, others can provide elements too. This isn't an exhaustive list of elements, but any coordinated economic growth plan should have these elements as part of it. So I wanted to compliment Colin. What a great story you had yesterday. My guys told me it was blowing up. I mean, we were in a meeting, it was blowing up across the country about the one you ran yesterday. So good work on that. But anyway, with that, we'll take questions. So looking forward to it, if there are any. So, yeah, go ahead.
I guess I was a little bit late today, so I'm sorry if you already went over this. But when I'm looking at this, some of the plans for SOAR, kind of that 50% for local economic growth, that kind of seems similar to, or at least akin to, the same goals that Democrats are trying to do with their Make It in Michigan fund. Mm-hmm. Where do you feel like that legislation falls short, or is that something you think is a step in the right direction for the SOAR fund?
Yeah, well, I think that, again, I compliment Senator Brinks for bringing some of these issues forward. I think our caucus feels that the Governor Whitmer has not made very good deals with the SOAR fund, and so the hire and SOAR issues have to be worked together, right? If you're going to double down on writing checks one way or the other to corporations to come into the state, then we should look at the existing programs and reform those, because we've seen the body of work, and in many ways they aren't working the way we intended. I saw some things in her plan I agreed with. We have little differences, but they want to see audits. Well, I think we should audit it too. I mean, how many of these audits do you see where MEDC, they just call them on the phone and say, are you creating jobs? And then they say yes, and then they say, okay, good enough for me. Well, that's why we think the Auditor General should audit these every year. Now, she wants somebody else to audit it, but hey, you know what? There's some movement in the same direction there that these need to be audited that we agree with her on. There's some things they had in there, like if you look, they think a bunch of this money should go to environmental justice. You're not going to get our members on that. Helping them implement this radical ban on natural gas and all these energy mandates faster that are going to make energy so much more expensive in our state. You're not going to see us go for that. But with that said, we want to see more of the money go to site prep without an end user, but a site prep, so you're getting sites ready. We keep hearing what an expensive part of it that is. So let's work on getting those sites developed, and then companies can come in. They have ideas, about, I don't want to speak for them, but based on my understanding, other things you would do maybe to build infrastructure or build up communities that can support those things. I would just say that many of those things were probably on the table as part of the conversation, but that has to be with, I think, some of the things that you see us talking about today that'll bring more transparency and accountability to these programs. And then real quick, we want to see more small businesses get it and more geographic balance. Yeah, Beth.
You mentioned a couple times making the MEDC more customer focused. Who do you consider your customers?
That's a great question. So I would consider it anyone who's trying to start a business in Michigan or grow a business. So whether that's an existing business that's here, that's trying to grow, or a company that's looking to locate here. I'll just say this, and you can go verify this, okay? If you're Ford or GM or one of these big companies that gets billions of dollars through SOAR, you're on a fast track and you're going to get your things approved probably by one person pretty quick. If you're anyone else in the state getting an incentive or some kind of tax abatement, there are a lot of different people you have to talk to and a lot of hoops you got to jump through. So if you're a small business trying to get an incentive from the state, good luck. I mean, you're going to have a lot of difficulty, and that's just what we hear from our constituents. And I think, if you talk to a lot of people, a lot of business leaders, they'll validate that. And so, that's why we're talking about, how do you do it? Because as the legislature, unfortunately, if the governor or Quentin Messer won't do it, it's hard for us to force them to do it. We're a separate branch, right? But I would say we can tie their budget to it. We can put metrics in there and incentivize them to start becoming more customer friendly, breaking down silos and figuring out ways to get to yes, like you see in other states. I think you all know, we hear the stories about how much easier it is in other states. So that's some of the things that we want to put forward in this conversation as we move through the budget. Yes?
A lot of your package deals with requiring new things of SOAR. Why not apply those same things to hire? And then just as a follow-up, you talked about not supporting environmental justice, but is there room in your proposal for brownfield funding or core city redevelopment? I guess where does your caucus stand on that? Any room for that for an ad?
Well, we'll have to see what specifically they're willing to do. I mean, they're going to need our votes, so we'll see what's important to them as part of getting it done. But I would just say that some of their ideas are not going to be on the table. I mentioned the environmental justice and others, as part of a process of setting a coordinated economic growth plan for Michigan. I mean, there's going to have to be some give and take, and I think there are members that are open to some of their ideas, but we'll have to do a little bit more conversation as a caucus before I can tell you which ones, honestly. And then what was the other one?
With respect to adding these kinds of stipulations for
Yeah.
the minimum wage to hire, why
Sure.
I guess just the focus on SOAR and not both?
Well, I would say that hire incorporates some things that we've learned from SOAR, or maybe they're things that were pulled from good jobs. And so if you look at hire sets income thresholds for receiving the money. That's why it makes sense to take that and apply a similar thing to SOAR. So that's one example. So I would say big picture, most of the things that we're proposing they do to SOAR, they should do to hire. And if it's not in there, then it's a specific reason related to some nuance in the program where it wouldn't apply.
And then I guess maybe I missed
Yeah.
it. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No. These are complicated issues.
So kind of just looking through the.
And then you
package,
guys have to explain them to the public, so we want to help you.
Does the package at all support wage minimums for incentivized businesses? I apologize if you've spoken to that, but I guess I was missing that on the paper. Or would you be supportive if it doesn't?
Wage minimums?
Yes.
So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying, but to me, if, I think it's like 170% of the median wage. Is that what we're saying? Is it 175? Would be the average wage in order to get one of these projects.
Okay.
That to me would be a way of setting a minimum, right? I mean, if it's the average.
Do you feel like that goes far enough, or are you looking for more, considering you brought up the fact of people being laid off to bring on new jobs that potentially could be laid off? I guess,
Yeah.
Is there any appetite for revisiting that?
Sure. I mean, I'm certainly, I think our caucus would be open to going higher. One of the things I would say, though, is, wages are different in different regions. And so if you're putting a requirement on that's a geographic requirement, and you're saying that it has to be spent geographically, which we propose, then the wages are part of that, because you're saying, say, 15% must go to northern Michigan, and then you're setting the wage really high. That's a way of killing the program. Do you know what I'm saying? So you have to kind of balance those things. And like I said, this isn't one of those Whitmer, where they go up there and they come up with a fake proposal. and then they get all the headlines and then you never hear about it again. Like, this is actually a real thought out proposal. So we wanted to be sensitive to those things, that if you go too high on the wages, then you can't do the geographic balance as easily. And the geographic balance is important. So we wanted it to be similar to higher, where it's above, so, it's pretty significant above the average wage, but not so high that you couldn't spend the money in northern Michigan or other places, because that was a factor. So hopefully that helps to explain it. Yeah.
So just some logistical nuts and bolts. So you mentioned you guys are hoping to start rolling out bills next week. Can you ballpark for me, what the plan is from here and how many new bills we can expect to see?
There's a lot of bills. I mean, look at all these people. I think they all got bills.
You got one per person?
Oh, there are more.
Doubling
Trust
up?
me.
Okay.
There were other members that wanted to be here, but we said next press conference we'll do, because there'll be more. But yeah, I think you'll see some of them introduced this week, and then when they get sometimes Tate likes to sit on them. So, but when my guess is you'll get them. You'll probably see them next week, because by the time we enroll them, they'll probably come through next week. And I think it's dozens of bills,
Gotcha. Thank you.
and they're serious bills, all of them. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the charges announced yesterday against Lee Chaffee?
Yeah, I would just say that I think it's important. These 501c4s are created for a reason, and they all have missions, and they're supposed to be benefiting the social welfare, as you know, Beth. And so it's important that those that raise money for those organizations, number one, that they're independent boards. They're independent boards that are executing their mission. I don't think a politician shouldn't be steering their spending. That's not what they're for. And number two, a politician shouldn't be using it to pay their credit card off and things like that. So, to the extent, their accusations, we'll see whether they're proven. But I'll just say the activity that is described, if true, is not what these accounts are intended for, and no one should be using them that way. And I certainly strongly disagree with them being used that way. And if they're used that way, then people should be charged with crimes and convicted for using them that way, because it's not the intent. They should follow the law. And the IRS, as you know, has pretty strict rules on how to do this. And so elected officials, if they're raising money for these funds because they believe in the causes, you better vet the organizations. You better make sure they have good board members, and you shouldn't be using them as personal bank accounts. That's for sure. That is not what they're intended for, and it's wrong.
So do you think the law is strong enough right now to patrol against that, or do you think there should be changes to state law to tighten up that process?
Yeah, I don't. Again, I see people and I read these stories, and I think this is important for everyone here to hear. What is this called? The Bright Act?
Yes.
The Bright Act's not going to do anything. Okay, there's not a proposal I've seen that's going to do anything. When I see a proposal by the Democrats that will actually do something about a fund like Road for Michigan's Future, then I'll start having conversations about getting behind it. Because I'll just say, they write all these stories about the legislators and what they're raising money for, but that is dwarfed by Road for Michigan's Future. What is it, $12 or $13 million, right? You look at, what is this other one called, the 21st Century Fund? I don't think anyone's ever done a story on that. When are they going to cover these ones where they're all raising into one fund and a bunch of Democrat Party operatives run it, and then they're reimbursing all of them? I don't see those kind of things being covered in the Bright Act. So when I see a proposal from them that's actually going to cover the funds, then we can start negotiating. But I haven't seen one from them. And look at their financial disclosure plan, right? Look, it didn't do anything. And this proposal won't do anything either. It's just a way of looking tough. But, who are these people that are going to put their family members and staff on these accounts? They just won't. They just won't. And then no one will register.
So you bring that up. Part of the Bright Act, if I'm remembering correctly, does require the individuals, public officials registered 501c3s and C4s with the state in order to sort of, in a way, disclose. I guess who's being, I guess, what are your thoughts on that? Are you supportive of that? Do you feel like that is still in need of tweaks and doesn't go far enough?
Well, like I said, if you look at the Bright Act, and this is my understanding of it, okay? This won't cover 21st century, what is it, Road to Michigan's Future. It won't cover the 21st Century Fund. Again, my understanding, and if I'm wrong, push back, but this is my understanding when I looked into it, you have to have like a family member on these boards, or you have to be on the boards, or you have to have your staff on the boards. So if this passes, then only the dumb politicians will do that, right? So there might be a couple House Democrats, but the rest of them, they won't do it that way. They'll just, it won't be their family members, and it won't be their staff. And look at Road for Michigan Future. How many Whitmer staffers and family members are on that? But we all know she's raising money for it. The same with the 21st Century, what's it, 21st Century Fund, which I think reimburses all of them. They say, I don't have one of these accounts, but they raise money for one and they get reimbursed is what I hear. So I don't know, you can dig into that, but I guarantee you the Bright Act's not going to cover that stuff. And so that's why I'm saying, they're not serious, they're just trying to talk tough. And until we see a serious proposal from them on the board, I'm the minority leader. Why do I have to do all the legislating for them? I mean, I'm already doing it on the economy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious, do you believe there's a Republican slate of legislation right now that would better address this issue, or do you have something that works?
Like I said, these guys don't have serious proposals, so we'll see what they come up with. And if someone has a serious proposal, then we'll look at it. That's just my opinion.
But what does serious look like to you, I guess? What would you like to see addressed?
Well, like I said, I don't think politicians should be using these funds as personal bank accounts. And if they are, they shouldn't be doing that. And so I know the IRS, I thought about it this way this morning. Like if you have a small business and they're embezzling money, they don't ask every small business in the state to open their books, right? I mean, this was an issue, according to the accusations, where that was happening. And it's been discovered, and now they're criminal charges. And, you'd hope the IRS would do something to enforce these laws. They should be. If it's anything like the border, maybe they're not. But I would just say they should be enforcing the laws. The laws exist. Registration isn't going to solve that problem because I just pointed out all the loopholes in that registration. So I haven't seen a plan from them that would do it. But I'll just say they shouldn't be doing that. If you do that stuff, you should be charged with a crime. And as you see, he's being charged with crimes.
Rep Kavik, you were on the board for one of these nonprofits. Do you have anything to add about how it was used or what reform should be made?
I echo Leader Hall's thoughts on that. If there was crimes committed, they should be punished.
Any other questions? Or?
Yeah, I'm just curious, again, is that something that Republicans plan on addressing with legislation? Do you have something in the works that?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the Democrats aren't planning on addressing it in legislation. So, if there's serious conversations, I'll engage in them, but they should cover funds like the Road to Michigan's Future and the 21st Century Fund. And if these reforms aren't going to include those kind of funds, then, we're not having serious conversations.
All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.